We're back on the record. All right. Vice President Anderson, are you finished?
I just have one more question as it relates to, and I'm not sure if I'm just not seeing it here in the packet, and Ms. Lee, maybe you could direct me, but I did see in terms of the rehabilitation, the notice of the San Joaquin County, the residential program there, but I don't see any of the other character letters, or if you could confirm that there was other character references included as well.
So I can maybe clarify a little bit, and then maybe we can, this would be a nice time to maybe segue into an additional letter that's not in this packet. So I believe, Board Member Anderson, besides what you've mentioned, I believe the character letter is from, it's not a letter, character letter so much as a completion letter. That's in the supplemental packet, which is not date stamped, but it's the first evidentiary document in that packet,
Okay.
October 2nd, 2023, from San Joaquin County.
Yes, I see that.
And then I believe you're segueing us into this letter, which Mr. Smith, I believe, obtained after all of this that we have in Exhibit 1. So would it be okay if we perhaps asked him to explain?
Yes, that would be great.
Great, thank you.
This is a letter from a friend of mine. You want to read it? I can't see. Okay.
Read into the record, just explain who it is and what you're saying.
Anyway, they're just saying what a turnaround in my life that I've had, and that it would be awesome to let me have a second chance at proving myself to everybody that I've changed. And she's a park ranger. Go ahead.
How long have you known? So this person's name is Catherine with a K, Katherine. Last name is Alorro, Aloro. How long have you known Miss Aloro?
I over 30 years.
How do you know her?
How I know her, I met her through the church when I was going back into church back then.
30 years ago?
30 years ago, yes.
Okay.
And I haven't had anything to do with her until the past 3 years. And she's seen a lot of the growth and improvements in my life, so that's why she was able to write this.
And in what capacity have you interacted with her over the last 3 years?
I go to the parks. She's a park ranger, and I help her do things around the park with, talking to people and cleaning up the place. And it's just something I enjoy doing with her.
And you said that she's a park ranger for the San Joaquin County Parks?
Yes.
Okay. Do you, is that work that you do for pay, or do you just volunteer?
Volunteer, yes.
And for the board and for the court, I've scanned this on my phone. I can't really do anything about it now, but I'll upload it to OH and also send a copy to our board contacts so that the board members also can see this letter.
Okay.
And my last question is, in relation to that, as we talk about your support system, and was there a reason that perhaps there wasn't character letters submitted from the volunteer work that you do, folks that perhaps are in your church, or any other, entities that are helping you through this rehabilitation?
The one thing that jumps out the most was yesterday was a holiday, and I was supposed to pick them up on yesterday, and I didn't pick them all up. That's one thing. And then the other thing is sometimes the mind just doesn't get it sometimes, it's like, so that's why.
Okay. That's all of my questions. Thank you.
I just have one question. Ms. Lee, do you have the petition for reinstatement handy? My question relates to that form.
Yes, Board Member Paxton.
Can you show that to Mr. Smith? And specifically on the second page, in the middle, there are 4 boxes that you're supposed to indicate whether or not you've been involved in any of these things since the date of revocation. Do you know why you checked no on the 3rd box? Convicted of any criminal offense.
Convicted of any criminal offense.
And again, the heading for that is since the effective date of the revocation, and since your revocation was in 2011.
Okay, so it would be a misunderstanding on my part?
I Yeah, I'm
I'm
just,
still not even see, my mind doesn't understand when I read.
Mr. Smith, can you use the microphone, please?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sometimes my mind doesn't comprehend what I'm trying to read, and so I'm still having that issue right now.
okay.
So,
So maybe if we can start here.
Okay.
This is the first part of what the, maybe start again, maybe, and then answer the question
okay.
again.
So were you asking me about a specific A, B, or C? C, right?
Yeah, the third one.
Okay, convicted of any criminal offenses.
But please read.
Oh, I gotta read up here
First
first.
part, yeah.
That's what my therapist tells me
Yeah.
too, is read first, I'm sorry. Since the effective date of the
If you don't have any recollection as to why, that's fine. I was just curious if there was an explanation.
I don't have any recollection, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank
sir.
you very much. No matter what happens here, I'm going to make my life good, really good.
All right, Member Tengen?
Thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's been quite eventful, and shows that you're taking ownership of your past through going through expungements. All the questions that I had have been answered.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
All right.
All right, anything else you'd like to add there, Mr. Smith?
Then I'm very sad that any of this stuff's happened. I feel real bad for society, for myself, for my family, that I put them all through this. And no matter how this thing ends up today, I'm on the right path and I'm going to be doing good in somewhere, some shape or form. So, and I really would appreciate that it could be in this way with my family so we could all stay together and do good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And Ms. Lee, anything in closing?
No, Your Honor, we'd submit all the evidence.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the matter is submitted, the record is closed, and we are off the record. Thank you all, and good luck to you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be this morning. You guys are great. Thank you.
Okay, we will now, pursuant to Government Code 11126C3, the board members will now meet in closed session for discussion and to take action on disciplinary matters, including the petitions. After the conclusion of the closed session, the meeting will return to open session. So we'll probably be 45 minutes to an hour, probably. So we will let you know when we go back to open session. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we are back. It is now 1:16 and we are back in session, 1:16 p.m. Agenda item number 9, discussion and possible approval of the June 28 and 29, 2023 Structural Pest Control Board meeting minutes. If I can ask a board member for a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. I want to open up to the public to see if you guys have any comments on this motion. Hearing none, it has been moved and seconded to approve the June 28 and 29, 2023 board meeting minutes. Sophia, can you take a roll call vote?
Yes. President Finley,
Yes.
Vice President Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Paxson,
Yes.
and Board Member Tingen.
Yes.
4-0 vote, motion carried.
Thank you. Let's see, agenda item number 10. A representative from the California Department of Pesticide Regulation is here today to provide their update.
Good morning, or good afternoon, sorry. Good afternoon, President Finley, Vice President Anderson, and members of the board. My name is Nathan Destralis. I work in DPR's Enforcement Headquarters Branch alongside Peggy Byerly, who is unable to be here today. However, she prepared the following updates. The structural regulatory training, staff from DPR and the board agency will be conducting our in-person training for 85 approved county attendees from 35 northern and central California counties at the NCAC and structural inspectors in the Berkeley-Richmond area from Tuesday to Thursday, November 7th through 9th. Our enforcement letter on this session will be issued to the CACs within the next week or so. We thank Matt Fabry from Douglas Products and Doug Bell from Cardinal for volunteering to be our on-site training partners again this year, along with Best Care Fumigation and Advanced Integrated Pest Management. As far as our 6734 decontamination rulemaking, Worker Health and Safety is looking into various options regarding the concerns raised during the public comment period last spring. On the EPA sulfurofluoride residential fumigation mitigation, DPR has been in contact with EPA this summer about a couple of remaining enforcement questions on the June 2023 SF mitigation label changes for residential fumigations, such as confirming the equivalency of our California fume log and to ensure that EPA's final decision on how annual stewardship training, being verified and documented, will be enforceable in California. And as for our certification and training regulation update, the regulations were filed with the Secretary of State on June 30th, 2023. The effective date will be January 1st, 2024. We're currently working on an enforcement letter which will include updated 3 CCR Section 6724 handler training templates to incorporate the added C&T items along with other refinements. Just like the current templates, the updated handler training template should be suitable for training structural registered applicator employees. Other items relevant to the structural industry include operator and field representative license holders will only be certified commercial applicators if their license is active. There are new requirements when non-certified employees handle restricted material pesticides under the supervision of a certified applicator. And Section 6742 will require employers to train the registered applicators who mix, load, or apply pesticides on the equipment prior to initial use and annually thereafter. Structural companies that also have a DPR license should look through the various other changes that could apply to their operations. So, thank you.
Any questions? And I didn't get your name.
Nathan Destrarlis.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for the update.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 11, Executive Officer's Report. I will turn that over to Sophia.
Thank you. So for agenda item 11A, staffing update, we're currently on recruitment efforts for our structural pest control board specialist in Southern California. We hope to hold interviews on November 13th and 14th in Southern California. Hope to have someone started with the board sometime in December or January of the new year. We recently promoted Alicia Vopodic and Rachel Jordan within the office. Alicia is our new licensing analyst. She will be providing technical and subject matter knowledge to the licensing unit. She's also going to be assisting the licensing manager with implementation of our BizMod project. Rachel Jordan is the new citation and fine analyst, and we're currently working on backfilling their old positions. For the budget update, the fund condition is in attachment 1 in your board meeting packets. I've also included this, for this meeting, a detailed report that shows our expenditures for last fiscal year 22-23, as well as the revenue for the year. The fund condition is based on the 23-24 Budget Act and assumes expenditures at full appropriation. However, our board historically has spent about $1 million less than appropriated every year. In 22-23, spending authority was 7.1 million. However, total expenses for the year were approximately 5.9. We began 23-24 with a fund balance of 3.1, projected to collect approximately 6.6 million in revenue and expenditures at approximately 7.6 million. However, that's assuming that we're spending at our full authority. And like I mentioned earlier, historically, we've spent about 80% of what we're appropriated, so about $1 million less. The fund condition projects ongoing expenditures with a 3% growth factor, increase per year. For the strategic plan update, in September of 2022, Governor Newsom strengthened the state's commitment to a California for all by directing state agencies to take actions to embed diversity, equity, and inclusion, referred to as DEI, into its policies and practices, including strategic plans. So late last year, Solid, who assisted us in September of 2022 in creating our strategic plan, and that strategic plan doesn't end until 2028. To ensure we're in compliance of the governor's DEI mandate, Solid is now helping us with conducting an abbreviated environmental scan and analysis with a DEI focus. Solid hopes to present the board members with the results of the scan and their analysis early next year and work with the members on incorporating DEI into our existing strategic plan. Attachment 2 in your materials is our strategic plan status report, which provides each goal area and the status of each related objective. So since the last meeting, we've increased our progress by an average of 15%. The table embedded in my EO report cover memo is a quick snapshot of the progress since the last meeting. Considering that this plan is through 2028, I'm really proud of the staff and everything that we've done so far towards reaching our goals. One thing that's not included in your materials, an update since all of this was put out, is I just want to give you a little update on our exams. The new applicator examination forms went live this month. The new examination plan, reference list, and useful website links and sample questions are now updated and can be useful to prepare for the applicator examination. We're currently working on the development of a new operator branch 3 exam, and a large part of this process relies on participation from licensees to serve as subject matter experts. We're having difficulty obtaining licensees as SMEs. So I've reached out to PCOC, requested their assistance and collaboration in recruiting qualified licensees who can contribute to the exam development process, specifically licensed branch 3 operators. The next workshop is in Sacramento, and it's on December 5th and 6th of this year. Licensed branch 3 operators that participate in this workshop will be provided a stipend per day, 12 hours of continuing education credit, and travel expenses paid in accordance with the state guidelines. Lastly, the occupational analysis for both the field representative and operator branch 2 begins in 2024. And we'll need subject matter experts again for the workshops. However, these workshops will be remote in nature, so it should be easier for SMEs to be able to participate in that. So if anyone is interested in any of our upcoming workshops or have any questions, they can reach out to Christina Jackson-Duran with the board via email, and there's a general email which is spcbworkshops@dca.ca.gov. One more update about exams that I just received yesterday. So solid ran monthly statistics for the new Field Rep 2 and Field Rep 3 exams for August. These exams were created with items reviewed and selected by subject matter experts in the workshops that we have. Both of these exams are performing very well, with a pass rate of about 80% for Field Rep 2 and 65% for Field Rep 3 for the months of August and September 2023. The prior exam rates were 65% for Field Rep 2 and around 45% for Field Rep 3. So I just wanted to share that with you, just to show the importance of SME participation in the workshops that, they help review and select exam items. And so it's really important to have that. That concludes my EO report. Are there any questions?
No. Did you, go ahead, if you had one.
No, the only thing I had was just on the, thank you so much, that was a great update. On the strategic plan, at some point, I would like to go over, we've got all it broken out and where we're at with each objective, but to know like what objective 1.3 is and when do we like dive into those ones based on where we're at.
Okay, I can provide that in my next monthly EO report
Perfect.
that I'll be sending out, and then I'll also include a much more detailed at the next meeting in March.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a question about the budget. Do you do, let me start over. I'm assuming you do projections for the current budget years. Do those projections show that we'll continue to essentially spend $1 million or so less than what is appropriated?
Yes, we are not seeing anything out of the ordinary coming up. It's just a projection,
Right.
Not sure what can happen. Based on my projections, though, I know according to the fund condition, we're showing that we're going
Right.
negative by 26, 27. I think that's going to be closer to 27, 28, 28, 29.
Okay.
If nothing, if we are in this, the same path that we're on right now. We are currently doing workload analysis in the office. We're looking at, what it takes to do each job. So, those are things that we'll be reporting in the future. Maybe we can look at, I don't see this happening anytime soon, but, our fees, we can look at that, the fee structure, as far as a lot of them have not been increased in, several years. I think examination fees, a few were increased recently, the last 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. But that's something that we're looking at once we conclude the workload analysis.
Okay. I just, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for everybody, but I think we'd all like to be very aware and fully informed on the status of the budget, because when I look at that and see, oh, we're in negative numbers in 25, 26,
Right.
that's something that, we all have to be on top of. So if you can, report to us regularly on anything that's going on that should make us
It will
think
affect that.
yeah, that number might actually become a reality, then, we're all going to have to do something about it. So thank you.
I will, definitely.
Clarifying though, excuse me, we would only be in that state if we were spending to our
Full
full
appropriation,
capacity,
yes.
correct?
Mhm.
Okay,
Which historically we have not.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any questions, John? No. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I will, now agenda item 12, licensing update. I'll turn that over to Melissa Zanetta.
Hello, board members. Let's see. So if you will start by looking at agenda item number 12. In your board meeting materials, you will see the licensing statistical report for the fiscal month of July for the current and previous fiscal years. In looking at those numbers, other than the increase in license renewals processed for the month of July due to the DCA printing delays, nothing really out of the ordinary that I noticed in the statistics. I'm very happy to say that the 2023 renewal season is finally done. That ended as of September 30th, so renewal period is now over. It was quite the renewal season, so that's a good thing. It's over now. As of October 4th, our final renewal numbers for 2023 are 6,013 licenses renewed this year, and 3,222 licenses canceled for non-renewal. So it was a big renewal year compared to the past. Also in A, I mentioned our licensing surveys. Typically, we have a survey summary. We don't have that right now because we are in the process of modernizing our licensing survey. So we're going to a digital format with the hope that we'll be able to get the feedback that we are really seeking. We've always done the postcards, and with that, it's really hard to get participation. So we're hoping that with a digital format, we'll be able to access more people, and it'll be easier for them to respond to us and increase our participation rates. So we're really hopeful for that. So hopefully next board meeting, I'll have an update on the outcome of that. Any questions on either of those two items? Okay.
No.
Okay. On to B, out-of-state qualifying manager update. During the last board meeting, additional information was requested on the roles and responsibilities of qualifying managers and the reality of them fulfilling their duties from out of state. You will see in Agenda Item 12B that I have provided a bit of background as well as the licensing unit's internal processes for ensuring that the qualifying manager's proximity to the office is not a hindrance to their ability to fulfill their role and oversee the day-to-day business. Now I'm going to take some time. I'm going to read the BNPs and CCRs that relate to this. So Business and Professions Code Section 8610 C states, each registered company shall designate an individual or individuals who hold an operator's license to act as its qualifying manager or managers. The qualifying manager or managers must be licensed in each branch of pest control in which the company engages in business. The designated qualifying manager or managers shall supervise the daily business of the company and shall be available to supervise and assist all employees of the company in accordance with regulations which the board may establish. Okay. Now, to further clarify the responsibilities of the qualified managers, Business and Professions Code Section 8506.2 was amended by AB 1874 in January 1 of 2017 to require the qualified managers be physically present at the principal office or branch office location for a minimum of 9 days every 3 consecutive calendar months, and to require that these days be documented and provided to SPCB upon request. Okay. Now, the CCNR, the California Code of Regulations, Section 1918 states in part, supervise as used in Business and Professions Code Section 8506.2 and 8610, the two that I just read, means the oversight, direction, control, and inspection of the daily business of the company and its employees, and the availability to observe, assist, and instruct company employees as needed to secure full compliance with all laws and regulations governing the structural pest control. Now, board staff has observed through conversations with the industry, that outreach and education on the rules and responsibilities of qualifying managers is needed. So management and staff will be working to identify ways that we can further educate the industry on this topic in regards to the roles and responsibilities of the qualifying manager. I come here today to ask for some input from board members on ideas you may have, whether it be closely looking at regulation and how we could further define the requirements in future regulatory updates, or is there anyone that maybe feels that we need to begin moving with the time of remote work and look at how qualifying managers can fulfill their roles and responsibilities outside of the required 9 days in office every quarter? So if anybody has some feedback or input on that, I would be grateful.
Sorry, I'm writing some.
Sure. Take your time.
Yeah. How often are we sending out, like right now, it says require the last of the page 1, and to require that these days be documented and provided to the Structural Pest Control Board upon request. How often are we requesting that?
Well, and that is something that's typically done on site inspection. So if we have a specialist that goes out, does an office records check, that is going to be something that they are more than likely going to request, especially if they've been identified as a company that may be having issues with their qualifying manager overseeing the day-to-day business. But also, our company registration desk, you get to know the qualified managers, the operators that have some issues, overseeing daily business of other companies. And so that desk, Frank specifically, works closely with the specialist to identify those companies. And if there's a new company that's going to be issued, and Frank thinks that this qualified manager is going to have an issue with overseeing the day-to-day business, he will work closely with the specialist and get them scheduled for an office records check, which is kind of, not exactly on a public calendar. It's just something that's going to be kind of a checkup just to make sure that they're fulfilling their duties as a qualifying manager.
And does this happen once a year, once a month? Typically, that we're like between a specialist and Frank's desk, that we're asking the company, hey, can you provide proof of this? How often is it happen?
I don't have any hard numbers, but I will say Frank is constantly calling. He's not too far from me, so I hear him all the time discussing different companies in different situations, especially relating to qualified managers not fulfilling their duties. So I know between them and their conversation, that's when they kind of determine if they need to. And if the first office record check is done and they feel like this company is going to be an ongoing issue, they'll continue to keep track of that company, and they'll continue to schedule office records checks.
Okay.
So really, it's just dependent on the situation.
Yeah.
There's not really, we're going to do this every time for every company every 6 months. It's really the situation, because some companies, even if they're new to the industry, QM is qualifying for them. Sometimes they're great. They do everything they're supposed to do, and there's really no need for that follow-up all the time. But we're really looking at the company registration desk, who we need to watch out for. And luckily, Frank's been there for a long time, so he kind of, has companies and names in mind when they pop up on a change of qualifying manager form. He knows when it may be an issue, especially if there's a distance issue going on there.
And is there anything, do we do anything as far as outreach to these sites where you can just go rent an operator's license, basically? Are we reaching out to those people that have them and say, hey, just so you know, here's what the law says. So if you are going to rent out your license, that's what they call it, I guess, here's what those rules are. Are we reaching out to those? Are we doing any outreach?
So as far as that list specifically, no, we have not went to the list and said, okay, let's contact this person, make sure they know the rules and regulations. But that's a great idea because there's complete websites where you can go and post your website for your license for rent. And most, I can't say all, but I would imagine that a lot of them are just, collecting paycheck and maybe not fulfilling all their duties. So that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, that would
too,
be-
for outreach.
okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I've heard a couple comments over the year, just being in the industry of like, oh, I can license 2 companies, so I just gotta rent out my license to some, anybody almost. And you're like, ooh, do you know what the rules are behind that?
Yeah.
And so
Well,
it might be nice to inform them.
Yes,
Okay.
and internally in the office, we get calls like that all the time. I'm going to be hanging my license on this company's wall. What do I need to do? Well, let's talk about that a little bit more because you're not just hanging it. You're actually going to be overseeing the day-to-day business. Anything that happens with that company, you're responsible for as the qualifying manager. I know, but I'm just going to hang my license. Well, there's a lot more to that responsibility. So we do take the time to discuss it when they call, because a lot of times they call and that's what we hear. Or then we call businesses asking for the qualifying manager and they have no clue who this person is, which obviously if, the office staff doesn't know that's a red flag,
Does the board currently have a stance, to your question number 2, does the board currently have a stance on where we're thinking we're going with these virtual meetings with not having to be in person 9 days every 3 months? I know we're running board meetings now through Zoom, and if we can say that works, then how can we say that you have to be in person 9 days every 3 months? Where I'm I'm right in the middle. So does the board have a take on where you guys are going with that?
I think internal staff and licensing, it just makes sense to us that they're in office doing their job. However, we're not taking into consideration that they may be able to do their jobs from another place, like many people do right now. So that's really why I want to get some feedback from you all, because we can only go within our authority. We have rules and regulations in place that we can work with, and that's all we have right now. So if we want to go a different direction, we're definitely open to feedback on what direction we want to go with this. That way we can, make changes and look at maybe future regulation, or if we want to go the other route, maybe more education on how they can go about supervising from a distance.
Do the specialists have an opinion on it that you're aware of?
We do have a specialist.
We can have our opinion on it, but the specialists are the ones out in the field that are like, are the specialists completely against it? And hey, what's the recommendation to the board of, we think it's going to be a huge issue if you allow them not to meet in person 9 days every 3 months and just do it virtually because they can lie about it really a lot easier?
So,
You want to use the microphone?
my answer would be that what I see in the field is that most of the people that say they are managing from afar and that they can do it with, computers and cell phones and all of these things, one, they're not capable of doing that because you're not really seeing a snapshot of what goes on in the business on a regular basis. You're just getting information from somebody else that's providing it. And what we see is that the people that are, quote, renting their license, or that they are providing that qualifying manager, they're typically doing that to somebody that's not really qualified to do the job themselves. And so, what the proper process would be is training and teaching that person to do that job. And you really can't do that by just communicating periodically over the phone. And to kind of back up a little bit in terms of, how often we actually get that information of them being physically present in the office, I can tell you that probably out of 100 times that I've asked for proof of documentation that you're in the office, I get it maybe 1 or 2 times. Wow. So there's nobody that's really documenting and providing that. But when we actually, push them on, are you supervising? Are you managing? Are you in here seeing what's going on? Most of the people that are providing the qualifying manager position without really trying to train and teach are not aware of anything that's going on with the business. So even though they'll say that and they tell us that, we just see that it's not happening. So trying to open more access to have remote opportunities, I think would just further the problems that we already have. I think that's what most specialists would tell you, but
Okay.
I can only speak for myself.
Okay, no, that's the feedback I wanted. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Tom.
Any questions from the board?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify something really quickly. So as we talk about wanting to educate around the roles and responsibilities, is it purely to the managers themselves, or is it more of a wider, like, I just want to get clear on like the audience that we're trying to reach, if it's just them or if it's also encompassing of the companies and others?
It would, yeah, I would say it would definitely, we would want to encompass whoever, anybody that's involved with the day-to-day business. I mean, even right down to the office staff and the techs. I mean, they really need to know who to go to in this, in that, or this or that situation, you know? So to be educated as a whole, I mean, obviously there's certain people that we really want to educate more than others because they are the ones that need to make sure that compliance is maintained. But it's not, it doesn't hurt for everybody involved to know what their qualifying manager's role and responsibilities are, because they're going to be the ones that they're turning to have their certificate of training experience filled out. You know, they're going to have to communicate them with, you know, even the lower level staff on a day-to-day basis, or they should be. You know, they should be, because they have to sign off on their pesticide usage stamps. There are a lot of forms that the qualifying manager has to sign off on a daily basis. So there's communication amongst everybody. There should be.
And I will add, sorry, I just would like to add that, you know, we have started those discussions in the office, and we are looking into incorporating this into our outreach efforts. So, you know, some of the things that we've talked about are like frequently asked questions on our website. I mean, this is for the businesses, newly licensed as well as existing. Video, you know, we're looking at creating a video for all new, a short little video with the department for all new licensees, and Heather's currently working on that right now. And we can incorporate something for qualified managers and what their roles and responsibilities are, what you can and can't do. Website updates, obviously, you know, utilizing social media. We are getting more followers, so we're trying to use that as much as possible. And then we have the newsletter that later in our outreach update, you'll get more information on, but we can utilize that because that's going to be going out to all of our licensees and others in the industry. So we're looking at, you know, kicking up outreach efforts when it comes to qualifying managers.
Since you asked for our input,
Yes.
I was going to say that, you know, I would defer to the people who are in the industry and know the industry far better than I do as to whether or not they think that remote management could work. But my perspective is, if there are things happening in the office, then the managers have to be in the office as well. So I would think that would create challenges for effective management and oversight of the employees. The other thing I just wanted to mention is, if there was a desire to do this, based on what you've written in your report, I think would have to be a legislative change and not just a regulatory change, if we were to back away from the 3 days or 9 days physically in the office. So that's it. Thank you.
Oh, I've got a statement, a couple, actually. I think the direct oversight's real important, because this way you'd have an opportunity to interact with the employees themselves. I mean, you're having someone sign for their certificate of experience that's, you know, 20 states away. You know, they don't even know what they look like. You'd be able to hear the daily business. You can ensure that the worker protection standards in place. You know, you can actually hear what's actually going on, versus, you know, their boss saying everything's okay and getting rubber stamped. I believe the accountability is there, because holding an operator's license is the highest level one can achieve in the business. and it's past the point of, oh, I didn't know. You know, it's time to take ownership, because that's what the license responsibility is. I think one way to suggest accountability is through renewals, acknowledging receipts, whether it's a hotel, gas, or food, to demonstrate, you know, they're actually there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the issue to me is more of, you know, what Tom alluded to on, you know, are we actually requiring it? I mean, it sounds like, which is what I thought it was going to be, the documentation was 1 in 100 as far as out of 100 times asked, one time he actually got the documentation. So it sounds like that's way more of the issue than whether we go virtual. I mean, even if we keep it the same, the way it is now, we're not getting anybody to comply or give us the information that we're requesting. Sounds like the issue we have here that we need to get on top of.
Is there any compliance, like penalties, if you will, that are in place if we don't receive documentation?
So when they do their office records check, that's when they'll determine whether or not they need to cite them for whatever it is that they're out of compliance with, and fine them, or order of abatement if they need to correct something. That would be, I think, an order of abatement is what they do for that. So
I'm sorry, what is it that they do?
I think it's called an order of abatement, where they would be required to fix whatever it is that needs to be fixed. So if they're not present, and they don't have proof of being present, and they could possibly be required to provide proof
Okay.
for future quarters.
And is the proof on us or is it on them in the sense of, do we need to, for a specialist to then find them, do we have to like prove that we know that they weren't going to the office, or that the proof's on them to then provide to us, and if they don't, then we can find them?
Yeah, so the burden of proof is on them to show us, and they don't. There may be several times that they are actually supervising, and they're just not keeping documentation of it. In those cases, we may not issue a citation or a fine. We may now start, documenting that and have that available when we. But we will do some assessment to determine whether or not they are actually supervising. And in a lot of cases, just having multiple violations that are ongoing that they're not aware of is a really good indication that they're not supervising, right? They don't know that this person who did the inspection isn't licensed or something. And so those scenarios give us a lot more proof to show that you're not actually supervising versus just not having the documentation. Try to decipher that and then make the decision whether or not to issue a citation or fine. And then sometimes we don't necessarily always do an order of abatement. We'll just say we'll do a follow-up inspection and come back and see that you're documenting.
Okay, any comments from the public? In the far back.
I also had one more question too. Sorry. That's okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon, board members. Darren Van Steenwyk, Sprague Pest Solutions. Listening to the conversation, just a little, I was there when I participated in some of the conversation getting to the point to where it is now, and it specifically was to address the idea of absent qualifying managers, and the board saw the impact that absent qualifying managers was having. And so they took these actions specifically to address that. And something else just to keep in mind, it was mentioned that one of the reasons why qualifying managers are showing up on site is to sign forms and whatnot. As we go to a more digital world, and as the website goes to basically as we move away from paper, and we are going to have to put less and less paper into the system, and less wet signatures will be involved. It will be easier for those individuals who are required to sign papers to have digital signatures to be more and more absent. So that's something that I'd like to have you all keep in mind, that if you were using wet signatures as a way to bring qualifying managers to the property, we are actually moving away from that. And so I don't know what to do with that besides keep asking you all to keep that in mind. And I would say that that the qualifying manager is ultimately responsible for what happens in that office, and that is an individual that we have to hold accountable for that, and they are ultimately responsible for compliance with all aspects of the law. Not only the Structural Pest Control Act, but also DPR laws and regulations, county laws and regulations. And so I would ask you all to make sure whatever steps you take moves further into the line of holding that individual accountable, and knowing that the less we require their involvement, the more that they are able to not be in, not know what's happening in that location, and some of them may not care, and that's ultimately where where previously this conversation settled on, which is how do we basically address the people that don't care, that are just renting or leasing their license out, for a paycheck. How do we address that? Because those people that in some circumstances, many they're waiting for their time in order to they want a license in order so they can get the experience, the years of experience to be able to qualify for an operator. Other people have are leasing other operators' licenses because they are not able to get their own. And so the question is, do we want those people to then operate on their own with a qualifying manager that is hands off? So those are just some questions that I would ask you all to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? We have another one.
So, excuse me, Todd Vadine, Terminix QM. Mic weren't working.
You might turn it off. Uh-oh. Gray button.
There we go. There we go. Todd Vadine, Terminix QM. Not used to hearing myself in the speaker. So just kind of echo off of Darren's point, I was also there when this 8506.2 came up, and the idea that was expressed in the board meeting was to keep an eye on potentially bad actors who are renting their licenses but not actually participating in the company's daily business. So the idea of documentation, that they were actually present or supervising the activities of the business and its employees. One of the questions that has kind of stuck out in my mind is, what does that documentation look like? Is it something as simple as signing in like we signed in out front here, or when we go to the Structural Pest Control Board? How do we elaborate on what that documentation involves? You mentioned receipts, meal receipts, hotel receipts. Maybe we're just driving in for the day and driving home at the end of the day, so I don't know how that would work necessarily. So that's something that clarity could be provided about. The other thing that came up in 8610 Part C, registered company shall designate an individual or individuals who hold an operator's license to act as qualifying managers. The qualifying managers must be licensed. I missed it. Supervise the daily business of the company. The out-of-state question came up. Can you do that virtually? I'm still pretty old-fashioned. I'm kind of a hands-on guy. I like in-person meetings much better than virtual meetings. That's just me. One of the words that, or phrases that comes up to mind is resident of the state. So if you're acting as a qualifying manager in the capacity to supervise a company, are you in fact present in the state as a resident? Otherwise, how do you document, again, back to the first part, that you were actually in the state and in the branch? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Board members?
So if somebody can't, either it's established that they're not there complying with the requirement to be there in person, or they just can't document it, what kind of fine could they be subject to?
Tom, if you wouldn't mind. Oh,
Perfect.
Well, okay, that's fine. If we can continue the discussion on the next agenda item, I can hold off till then.
Okay, licensing update. Thank you so much.
yes.
Do we have another comment real quick?
Left my mic on, sorry.
Oh,
I want to get feedback to make noise.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
I've got a quick statement.
Okay.
In the state of Nevada, the qualifying manager is known as a primary principal, and in order to run the business, you have to be licensed there or acknowledge that you are an out-of-state company. And the regulations are very clear and finite. If you acknowledge that you're an in-state and you're not, your license gets revoked. In the state of Nevada, it's real cut and dry, you know, and they don't go after the company, they go after the person's license. And so everybody over there, you know, they can carry a gun in public, I think, or at least in Arizona, and it's yes or no. There's no I didn't know, or so going back to it, you know, full circle, you know, if your license is on the line, you know, you have a public duty, you know, for public health and safety to make sure that the work's being done correctly. And I think being on site, saying you're physically there, however ways we make, you know, deem that you're there, it's important, you know, and to take ownership of and accountability of one's license. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you all.
Okay, agenda item 13 is enforcement update, and I will turn that over to Kathy Boyle.
Mr. President, board members, pleasure to meet you. Thought what I would do is just have you turn to the next page where we have the enforcement statistics report. We have the 5 different categories. So since the last meeting, basically the statistics for the last quarter 3 and quarter 4 for fiscal year 2022-23 has been completed. And so we have the total figures for that particular fiscal year, and we're able to compare that to the total information for fiscal year 21-22. So the first column is complaints received as well as convictions and arrests received. So in the complaints received, just for the total, we look at the year to date. So that number of 270 represents the year to date of complaints received for fiscal year 22-23, and we compare that to 21-22. Basically, we had a decline of 18%, which we'll talk to in a minute. Regarding the convictions and the arrests received, this has been a kind of a new add-on. So looking at, again, the year to date, we have a number of 981, which does exceed the previous year of the 21-22 of 697. So we actually had an increase of 29% just between the arrests and convictions. And that is something to behold. In terms of the average days to close and assign, that varies a bit, basically in terms of, I don't know if that, honestly, if that's a total of the complaints and the convictions or not, but a little bit of a minor. So regarding, just as a quick sidebar, I'm going to talk later about the complaints And the final citations as a brief sidebar to the question regarding QMs that came up earlier. Moving down to the investigations column, you see there for, again, year-to-date, for volume of investigations, we had 299 compared to the 328. So we were down basically 0.09%. So we're pretty close there. The average days to close, if you see the asterisk, that will be addressed later by Sophia. Transmittals to the Attorney General, the AG. Again, year-to-date, we had 35 compared to in the earlier fiscal year of 21-22 of only 29. So we had a 17% increase in a greater number of cases to the Attorney General in just the most recent fiscal year. Lastly, getting down to the citations. Now, just for you to know, citations do include what we call non-compliances that basically are noted by the specialists when they go out to do a site inspection or as referenced in office records check. Citations also include cases. So if we receive complaints, again, from the specialists, we also can get complaints that are handled internally, which we call basically desk complaints. You'll see that we basically had 165 years to date compared to the last fiscal of 21-22 of 188. So we were down by 12%, but we had a number of items related to that. We were still coming out of COVID, et cetera, when we're comparing the two. But now I'm going to do that sidebar when I talk about the qualifying managers. So related to these final citations, in the 165, I'm going to throw out a range here of about 40, honestly, to probably 70% of the citations that come in either from a site inspection, which is generated either through the licensing department, through basically industry, somebody like a competitor making a specialist aware, making the board aware directly, through a complaint that they've been called out to. There are a number of ways that the board itself, through staff, are become aware of a company not being run well, or basically what that responsible person, or in this case, a qualifying manager, how well are they doing his or her duties? And so for that range of, again, it's a ballpark of 40 to 70%. So when citations are issued, it could be that from a single complaint, that might generate multiple citations as a result of a complaint case. So it could be the qualifying manager as well as the business, the principal registration. It could even be the qualifying manager and the branch office. It could be the inspector of record in the case of, say, a termite inspection report. So you get these multiple entities that basically, as a result of a complaint, and sometimes, not as often, from a site inspection or this headquarters check. So as a result, for them not doing their work, and in terms of, yes, they do get fined, on rare occasions, there could be an order of abatement, or more to the point, an order of abatement might be, you need to rectify your paperwork, such as what we call an 8538 notice, which is basically known as, before I come to your house, we agree to have work being done. I need to provide you with a written notice about the names of pesticides that I might use on your property. So I'm giving you the list beforehand, and this particular list, this notification, appears basically across all three branches. Branch 1 is rather unique. Branch 2 is much easier to be read because it's individual. You usually get into what we call agreements, periodic agreements, where I'm going to come back to the property. So that's in terms of you getting the context for which this notice and why these individuals are responsible and why we can find them, not even dealing with the physically present, but more to the point of supervision of the business operations or of the employee. And then when we get to the branch 3, again, just for context, in that termite report, this particular notice, if I make a finding and recommendation and I say, we're going to local treat, or we need to use something to take care of different, either the organism, the wood-destroying pests, or the wood-destroying organisms, if it involves a treatment, which is a type of pesticide, that same notice needs to be provided as well. So you have this documentary type evidence independent of, say, physically present. So based on that, yes, indeed, the company and multiple individuals related to either a case or to a headquarters can be fined, either a fine, and then in terms of, is there past history? What's the egregiousness? So in terms of that amount of the fine, the frequency of a fine, the individuals who end up getting fined. So I hope that helps answer some of the questions brought up during the licensing. Just on this particular idea, so one other point before I move on. In terms of the investigative fines, basically, there is, in terms of the year-to-date, that's going to vary. You can see, obviously, the specialist fines are a little bit down. I did not do any percentages for difference, but you can see the dollar amount differences between year-to-date for 22-23 compared to 21-22 as you go down the board. The civil penalties, again, that happens to be actually what County Agricultural Commissioner's Office fines our structural licensees. So that's that pesticide component that comes up, since that really is under the, basically the auspices of the Department of Pesticide Regulation and carried out by the County Agricultural Commissioner's Office. So again, the reference that Tom made earlier, or that Darren made in terms of there are multiple code sections, not just within the Structural Act, that if I was a qualifying manager, I need to know all of that, and I need to pass that along to the individuals that are in my company. And so these civil penalties might be of interest to you in terms of, again, the role of that qualifying manager or the experience and knowledge of the individuals applying the pesticides that County Ag happened upon in their course of doing inspections, again, across all three. Well, I should be fair. Basically, County Ag, they're able to see branch 1s and branch 2s. Branch 3 inspections are pretty rare just because of the difficulty for a County Ag inspector to come upon something that's being done, especially when it's inside, in a backyard, that sort of thing. So again, I mentioned just in terms of this decrease, the total decrease, part of that has to do with basically, again, the California housing market. So there happened to be an article from the California Association of Realtors dated August the 11th of this year. And in this news release, it mentions that single-family home sales from April to June of 23 are down 17% compared to April to June of 22. So again, with comments made earlier in terms of which way are we going with the budget, just a point of reference for that. And I know later on Sophia will deal with the asterisks that are mentioned there. So now moving on to the WDO survey. So here we have the benefit on this next page of, we did have the statistics for July and for August. Now we're comparing current year, 23-24, to our most recent previous year of fiscal year 22 to 23. So looking across basically the 92,000 in July of this current year, current fiscal, moving over to the 108,300, we're down 15%. It increases again in the month of August, down 26%. And yes, that is something of note. Again, how much is tied to the housing market, but something to take a look at. Now, when we go to the next page and we get to see the year-to-date, to me, that's a little bit more hopeful in terms of where we'll end up at the end of this particular fiscal year. So looking at the total, I'm just going to go straight down to the bottom. So the year-to-date total at the bottom, so for current year 22-23, we have 1,128,600 of statistics. Basically, these are WDO activities that have been submitted to the board. And in comparing that to the 1,266,600, we're down 11%. So over an entire fiscal year, in terms of how significant was the decrease, I take a little bit of relief that it was only 11% down on the terms of the total of WDO activities submitted in this more recent year compared to the previous 21-22. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much. The only thing that I circled that I had a question on is when you first started, the 29% increase on the convictions arrest received year over year. Are we being more lenient on something? Is is there something why that number skyrocketed?
On this convictions, you're
Yeah,
talking about?
I'm reading that correctly, just that's convictions, arrest received that we've received from our licensees, correct?
And you know what? I am not the best one to answer that particular question. I'm
Okay.
gonna leave that.
So that would just be
It's
something.
it's the total number of arrest reports that we've received. Arrest reports when they apply, or convictions, excuse me, or arrest reports, subsequent arrest reports once with their licensees. So it doesn't reflect, what action, if we've done anything as a result of the report. It's just a total number of convictions and arrests, things that we need to look at to determine, is there going to be some sort of denial that comes out of this, or disciplinary action as a result of the subsequent arrest report?
Yeah, I see that,
So
but
it's
we do have 29% increase
it
year
looks
over
like-
year of people in our industry
Right.
that are getting arrested or convicted of
Yep.
something, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So is there something on getting your license that we 2, 3, 4 years ago said, oh, we can't ask these questions, or we can't look into that anymore? I mean, we do the live scan, the same process.
Same process.
Same process. It just
Same process.
luck of the draw. A lot more people in our industry are getting in trouble.
Yes.
Okay. I guess that's what I was
Right.
alluding to, wanting to know more about that.
It's the same process. Every licensee is required to get a background check. The only thing that's changed is, what's asked on the application up front as far as their criminal background. But everyone is still getting fingerprints. We're still getting arrest reports if there is one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I love seeing these stats. So any questions? So thank you so much. This is great. Any questions from the board?
No, I would just say thank you so much for this. I think it's really helpful, to your point, Kyle, is just to have a little bit of that context of whether it be dips related to the real estate market, or if, there's certain decreases. I think it was really helpful to understand on some of those dips, like where they might be coming from. And again, some of it is, I understand, we might not have foresight into what that may be because it's numerous contributors, but I just wanted to say that that was helpful, especially for someone that's not in the industry, to really understand some of those decreases, and if there's anything that we could be doing differently, or if it's just something that is just a matter of the environment, the landscape right now. So thank you.
And Kathy mentioned the asterisk in the statistical report. All I want to point out is that for the investigations, I think at the last meeting, Board Member Paxson had some concerns with the average days to close, and it was well above our targeted 180 days. We looked at that a little bit closer, and the report that was provided was incorrect. The numbers were incorrect. I think we're really trying to get these reports as accurate as possible, and we're making some changes to our spreadsheets and whatnot, and it was reported incorrectly. So I apologize for that. These are, as you can see, we are below our 180-day target date for investigations. And then the same thing with the investigative fines. We realized in the last report it was a cumulative total that was being reported. So this is actually reflective of what was for quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and 4.
All right, thank you for clarifying. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item 14, legislative update. And I will turn that over to Heather Jackson to present.
Okay. Thank you, President Finley, board members. I appreciate the opportunity to provide the legislative update today. We are currently at the end of our legislative cycle for the year. The last day for the governor to either sign or veto bills is October 14th. As those come to pass or be vetoed or fail, we will have a final legislative update for you guys in the next monthly EO report. We also plan to do some outreach on any of the newly chaptered ledge that may affect our licensees. One opportunity is through our newsletter that's going to launch in January, and I will go into that a little bit more later in the outreach update. Included in your materials is a detailed analysis for each of the bills we've been tracking this year. Today, I would like to highlight a few. The two that affect our board specifically are SB 813, which is our sunset bill. That was signed by Governor Newsom over the weekend and will extend the operations of this board until January 1st, 2028. AB 307 was actually signed back in July, so that one is in effect and will remain in effect until January 1st of 2029. 3 bills impacting our industry, not necessarily our board operations. Assembly Bill 363, which is regarding DPR's reevaluation of neonicotinoids. Sorry if I murdered that name. For non-agricultural use and possible ban that would be effective January 1st of 2025. That one was signed over, I believe, the weekend as well. 2 other bills, AB 652 and 1322, are enrolled and pending governor's signature or veto. 652 is DPR's Environmental Justice Advisory Committee. This would be establishing that. And AB 1322 was regarding the second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, including the difascinone. Several bills that affected our department as a whole have passed. There was 7 total, and 5 that have passed. 2 of note, SB 143 reinstates the current Bagley-Keene teleconferencing requirements through December 31st. That was through a trailer bill. They were able to get that extended through the end of this year. And then SB 544 is the actual modification to Bagley-Keene bill. And that one also passed and will allow state bodies to hold open or closed meetings by teleconference with certain qualifying requirements. That will have a sunset date of January 1st of 2026, at which point I'm sure they'll go back and see how it's going and make modifications where necessary. With that, I can conclude my legislative update. Happy to take any questions.
I just want to say thank you so much for splitting that up and making it super easy to see like what is affecting structural pest control board compared to pest control industry, compared to department. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
For me, hopefully it makes a big difference for the other board members. There's a couple on status, the ones that are in green compared to the one in red. What's that?
So when this was printed for the materials, it was a few weeks ago. The chaptered ledge I just put in green. That one it's passed. We don't have to do anything with it. It's chaptered.
Okay. It's red. It's enacted. Okay.
So since then, that is also for SB 813, SB 143, 372, 544, 877, and AB 833,
Okay.
and AB 363.
Okay. But yeah, splitting them up. Thank you so much for doing that.
Absolutely.
I do have one question, just for a reminder, really, for the board and others that are joining us. Could you share a little bit again in terms of the ones that are related to the industry, just how we're sharing some of that may affect folks? Like, how are we conducting some of that communication around, hey, be aware of this legislation that could potentially impact you? Just as a reminder of how we're doing that as a board.
Yeah, for the ledge that's impacting the industry, we kind of track it throughout the process, and if it passes and it has an impact on our licensees, then the plan is to do outreach and get the information out there as much as possible in terms of how it would affect their license or their operations.
So that's just using our various different channels. So for instance, like in January, we might be able to put that into the newsletter and then social media and otherwise.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You guys just sent one out, right? Something just got sent out in the mail. I know I got a letter
The
from.
industry advisory regarding the NPNA 33.
Yeah.
That was direction from the board at the last meeting. We wanted to clarify the use of the NPNA 33 form. That does affect, our licensees. It wasn't as a result of any legislation. It was more clarification on when that can be used by by our licensees that are conducting WDO inspections.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I was just making the point of like, I just got something the other day,
And
so
that's-
great that we're doing the outreach.
And if that's something that, I can work with our legal counsel and with staff on, if we want to put an industry advisory on something that's affecting the industry that isn't necessarily, a bill that affects our operations, but because it affects the licensees, we can put it out that way, with that avenue as an industry advisory.
Anything else from the board?
I just wanted to thank you for including the legislative analyses. So in case I want to read a little bit more, I can read a little bit more. Are these all the most current or the last produced legislative analysis, or?
At the time of printing, yes.
That's all I can ask.
There's a few that were amended right before they got signed.
Yeah.
So we definitely try our best to include
Okay.
as much information.
On 544, maybe I imagined this, but I thought I read something recently. In this analysis, it mentions that at least one member of the state body has to be physically present at the location specified in the notice. I feel like I heard or read something within the last week or two that has been changed to half of the board's members have to be physically present. Is that?
I believe it's actually the majority of the board, so your
majority.
quorum has to be in one
So, okay.
location.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
That
you.
one got amended
Yes.
right after
Yeah.
printing, so yeah.
And I
So
can,
it's an improvement, but it's not back to the Wild West days of the COVID rules. Okay.
no, that's what we're in now.
Yeah, no, I know, which is why we're all here today.
We had it scheduled before we knew.
And if you'd like, I can provide a more detailed, I provide the ledge update in my monthly EO reports. So on November 1st, I can, put links in there to the final analysis and updates on everything that passed and vetoed and whatnot.
Having served as an attorney for boards and commissions and now being on a board, I think it's really important for board members to know what the rules are, because it will make it easier for you to say, no, sorry, you actually have to be there in person, and not deal with issues about addresses or locations or whatever. Just so if you can send out something with what the new rules are for at least the next couple of years, I think that would help handle your board members.
And SB 544, it was a little bit confusing. And I think the department, really, the legal unit in the department put out something to us that really broke it down and was easy to understand, so I can include that as well. Right.
Okay. From the public, any comments on any other updates, including legislative? Or are we good? No public comment? Okay, so let's go to agenda item 15, rulemaking report, and it's still you, Heather.
I'll be up here for a minute. Thank you. For the rulemaking report, there's really two items. The first is pretty involved, and then the second is a simple update. I don't know if you have a preference on what I handle first. Okay, all right, yes. Thank you. So item 15B is the update regarding regulatory proposals for disciplinary guidelines, which is affecting section 1937.11, and the pesticide application notice requirements affecting section 1970.4, and adding section 1970.41, 42, and 43. For disciplinary guidelines, this effort really started in March when there was discussion about possibly making revisions. Since then, the board staff has reviewed our current disciplinary guidelines to see where we might be able to update. We've worked with our legal counsel to come up with some verbiage for some possible additions, and we've formed a work group for reviewing the disciplinary guidelines as a whole before it actually comes to the board as a proposal. So we are targeting summer of next year to come to the full board with a proposal. We plan to meet with the work group very early on next year, January, February, and then form a proposal to then at the next meeting. For the pesticide application notice, we've been working with DCA to make little minor revisions to the package just to make sure that it is fully compliant before it goes to OAL. I believe we should be hearing something in the next coming weeks, although I don't know, can I announce that? Alex?
We just found out our regulations attorney is moving on to another department. So he expects to have his review done of this package before he goes. And so hopefully that will be over at agency for review and approval. And they take, I believe, 30 days is their time frame for review, and at which point we can publish with OAL. This package is, it's been going on for a while now.
Thank you, Cynthia. And then once we file with OAL, it will open up a 45-day comment period. That is rulemaking report section B. Do you guys have any questions on that before we go back to A? Okay. Okay, so this regulatory proposal that we have for you today is renamed, but it's basically the same goal, what is to comply with EPA. The previous proposal was reviewed by board staff after last board meeting to separate out only those sections and revisions that are necessary for compliance. We discovered that many of the revisions that were in that proposal were actually coming from a continuing education IPM subcommittee that was formed and their proposed revisions. And we will be addressing CE in a future regulatory effort. The changes in this proposal, you'll notice, it would be on page, right after the memo, it would be page 2 in your board materials, is the proposed text. The first section, 1970, we are incorporating the standard fumigation log by reference, whereas right now it's described in subsection A, and then there's a complementary form available for use. So this proposal is incorporating that fume log and just the additions that you see, a report as defined in subsection A, was added to differentiate between the fume log report and reports for other pesticide applications, non-fume. Because we're incorporating the form by reference, we've included all of the described line items in current subsection A. It's already on the form. So what we did was we're proposing to strike that section and include the form by reference. That would renumber B to A and then become the new subsection for non-fume pesticide applications. And that section has the meat of how we're complying with EPA. That we are adding the time of application, you'll see in number 1. We're making modifications to the gendered language and just making it neutral. We're adding plural to description of areas. We're adding the S there. And then the pesticide product name, including the US EPA or California registration number on the pesticide label. This is directly from, this is how we are complying with the new standards. Number 7, same thing. We're adding the license number and specifying our license type of applicator who applied the pesticides and identifying the license number of the field representative or operator who applied or supervised. And then it jumps to 8, which is the or. EPA considers certified commercial applicators differently than we consider our applicators. So we wanted to differentiate between our applicators are non-certified, our field reps and operators are. So we also wanted to include non-certified commercial applicators as well as certified commercial applicators when we're talking about restricted use. And that is the summary of the changes. We are asking for a motion from the board today to approve this language to notice. The full motion language is included in the memo under recommendation, if the board so chooses. With that, I will take any questions.
Board members, do you guys have any questions?
I just would like to thank you for a staff report that has more information than in the past. Thank you. It helps. It helps.
Let me see. Okay, no more questions? So I don't know how it works as far as, do I need to read the whole thing?
I'll make the recommendation.
Okay.
You're going to have to say it all.
Okay.
So no, you're just going to where it says motion to, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I make the motion to approve the proposed regulatory text and changes to section 1970 as provided in the materials, and direct staff to submit all approved text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. Do I need to keep reading? If no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process. And here's the key part: make any technical or non-substantive changes to the package and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations in section 1970 as noticed.
I will second that. Open for public comment. Hearing none. It has been moved and seconded. I'll ask Sophia for a roll call vote.
Gladly. Thank you. Board President Finley,
Yes.
Vice President Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Paxson.
Yes.
Board Member Tingen. 4-0 vote, motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, Heather, you are up again on agenda item 16, which is outreach and communications update.
Thank you. Included in your board packet is a memo that goes into detail about our email communication efforts since the last board meeting, our listserv subscriber totals, and social media, some few highlighted posts that we've had since the last board meeting, links to the recording of our June board meeting, recruitment for our operator branch 2 and 3 workshop, the vacancy notice for our specialist position in Orange County, the DEI survey that Sophia spoke about earlier, and a link to the NBC Bay Area media report that our board specialist, Jeff Moring, was involved in. There's also stats as an attachment if you're interested. It's a good read. Our quarterly newsletter is something I wanted to highlight. It will be launching in January, and we do have a name for it. We polled all of our staff and our specialists we've brainstormed some ideas, and we've come to an approved newsletter name of the SPCB Quarterly Spin, and that's short for Structural Pest Information Newsletter. So that's what we're calling it. The president-elect from this meeting, as we do elections later, will be featured in the next newsletter and have an opportunity to write to the industry. So that is interesting and fun. Pending the election results later today, Christina Jackson Duran will be reaching out to whoever that may be. And one more, sorry. The live events and speaking engagements that we have attended back in August, we were at the Placer County Senior Resource Fair in Roseville, California. We had a booth set up with 65 other organizations and was able to provide information to over 500 community members, and we helped to educate and empower the consumers that were there to make informed decisions on pest control. Coming up tomorrow and Thursday, the UC Riverside Fumigation School is in Pomona, California, and that we will have the board's Chief of Enforcement, Kathy Boyle, as well as Board Specialist Tom Eineken will be presenting. I believe they'll be presenting on regulatory updates as well as common inspection problems. And then in November 7th through the 9th in Berkeley, we will be having the structural regulatory training. This is training provided in partnership with Department of Pesticide Regulation. And this is an annual training that they are able to give to hundreds of county agricultural commission inspectors and biologists. So we're looking forward to that. And with that, I can conclude my outreach update. Take any questions.
Thank you so much. We love seeing all the stats and updating us on where we've been, where we're going. Any other comments?
I just had one question. I believe I posed this last time, and I'm sorry if you don't have to have an answer this time around, but just curious if maybe we could find out if we are able to, and this is where I don't know if it's appropriate because it's state dollars, but in terms of our social media accounts, and because I would imagine that they're set up as business pages, if there's an ability to do like boosted posts. So again, that's not something we need to resolve right now, but just curious if that's something we might be able to look into.
I can speak a little bit to that. I do believe staff is looking into that and working with the department to see what our options are.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, and then one last thing. In terms of, I love this recap in terms of our outreach here. And I think one of the conversations we were having earlier was specifically around, and this is more of us being more educated on our end around our potential partnerships that we have from an educational standpoint. So for instance, like UCR, like do we have any other university partnerships that perhaps we could get a little bit more educated on, whether it be from like a college university level or if it be, other educational entities, that just so that we're aware as a board as to like what our partnership looks like, what does that engagement look like. I think this is wonderful to see how we're participating here from a live events or standpoint, but if there's maybe potentially other ways that we're engaging with them that we should be aware of, I think that would be great.
Certainly, yes.
Tom, you had,
Yeah, so currently we do partner with University of Riverside and University of Berkeley and participate in their programs that they do for PEST conference, urban PEST conference, and that's part of what the UC Riverside that we're going to. Berkeley, we partner with the entomology there, the urban entomology, and whatever projects that they've done as well.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was asked to the board of what kind of like educational outreach do we do? What kind of educational institutions are we partnered up with? And a lot of us didn't really, we were like, oh, we don't really know. And that's why I think that question was asked. So continue to keep updating us like this. It's great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are past agenda item 16, so we're on to agenda item 17. Thank you so much, Heather. Agenda item 17 is discussion and possible action regarding termite bait stations and termite monitoring devices, and that will be Tom Manikin, so you can get home and fly out tonight, I'm sure.
Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, President Finley and Vice President Anderson and board members. So this issue and this item was brought to our attention. We've been receiving multiple requests and inquiries regarding bait stations and monitoring stations. Some of the background I'll give you is that, they're recently, or I shouldn't say recently, but in the past, we've done some changes to the regulations regarding bait stations and monitoring stations. We kind of separated that out, and in the memo that I provided, you can see the way the regulations read there. But the most important issue and what has caused this to come to attention is the request for how can they use the bait stations in ongoing programs, and what's the appropriate recommendations for either control measures for subterranean termites or preventative measures for subterranean termites. And it's also kind of increasing to other pests such as drywood termites and things. So we wanted to bring it to your attention and make you aware of some of these issues. There's also, in some of these questions, as I have been involved in speaking at some of these events, whether it be the universities or continuing educational courses, the pesticide dealers as well as some of the companies have been inquisitive about how are we able to do this, and does the law really match up? And as I've looked into it, I've come to the conclusion that the law really doesn't match up to what's going on in the industry. You'll also notice the comment I have in there about research information indicates that California has been slow to implement some of these regulations and using the baits more effectively. I don't know that it's that the industry isn't using it so much as it is there's just not an awareness and an actual regulatory ability to do that. And then, of course, there's been recent research with Andrew Sutherland's program in UC Berkeley on the IPM program with UC Davis that was doing the research regarding the bait stations. So what I wanted to bring to your attention is the issues in terms of the way the law works, and I'll just highlight these different areas. So you can see that I broke out Section 1991, which is the requirement for making recommendations to control subterranean termites. It mostly is related to liquid applications and performing treatments underneath structures. And then you can see how the bait stations in Section 1993 and the monitoring section, 1993.2 for bait stations and 1993.4 for termite monitoring devices, they really don't line up with what the recommendation for a treatment states. If you read 1991, where it talks about the fact that you're going for extermination of subterranean termite infestations, you're to treat an infested area under the structure when subterranean termite tubes are found connected to the ground or when active infestations are found in the ground. Then it goes on to talk about the subterranean termite tubes needing to be removed. And the only reference to bait stations is where it states that if you use an above ground station, that you can leave the tubes intact. And that's really only referring to the removal of the tubes versus leaving them intact. And then when you consider the fact that a bait station system is putting stations in the ground approximately 2 feet away from the building or the structure around the exterior of the structure, it's just not really within the scope of what everything in the law pertains to inspecting a structure and making recommendations to treat a structure. Whereas now you're applying a product around the exterior perimeter, not to the structure. And so we really believe, if you look at the analysis on all of this in the memo, it pertains to there should be some changes to the regulation and there should be some adjustments to what companies can and can't do, how these products should be used. And I think the appropriate process at this point would be to create maybe a committee to start looking into this. I think the executive officer could recommend that, and then you could begin to establish a committee that could look at all of these regulations. It also doesn't really define or address whether or not a licensee or a non-licensee can begin to inspect those bait stations or the monitoring stations and how that should be applied. So there's just a lot of holes in the law, a lot of holes in the process that our regulatory ability doesn't give us the authority to really help industry in what they should or shouldn't be doing. And we don't want to see kind of the Old West process here. So any questions on that?
No, I mean, two things. I think one, yeah, creating committee would be great. But two, can you give us like the 1 minute, what is the problem? Like, what are you seeing as a specialist out there that is someone inspecting a home a year after someone bought the home and they're saying, hey, we have termite tubes everywhere. And then the previous company is saying, oh, don't worry, we left those there on purpose, even though we did a treatment because we put these bait stations in. What is like what's like spurring this on?
So in the beginning, when bait stations were formulated or invented, the biggest issue was that companies were recommending to install bait stations around the outside of the perimeter and not dealing with any control measure to the interior. So you still had active subterranean termites infested and feeding and doing damage inside the structure, and yet these bait stations were applied around the exterior. As time has gone on, the formulation and the process and the actual installation and the technical work that the companies were doing has evolved much better to where they are getting more control, but it's just not dealing with several issues that could come alive. If you install bait stations around the exterior perimeter and you don't do any local treatment, can you certify the property? You could potentially still be having ongoing infestation in the structure, even though somebody says we're doing an active control measure that may take 3-6 months or even longer to get control. And so what has evolved is a lot of companies doing local treatments to the structure and then doing the baits around the outside. And so some of the issues where I think a lot of industry as well as experts in the whole pesticide, reducing pesticide scenarios that we have in California now are saying, why would we be doing the localized treatment inside if we could, get control with the bait stations as well? So do they want to start minimizing that process? And then what is going to be the issue of, can you certify the property for real estate transactions versus you're still ongoing with control measures and having infestation in the structure, as well as the bait stations require a control service agreement, which is a long-term ongoing process, which most people aren't going to be doing if they're selling their home. And so it just brings about lots of issues that aren't being resolved with the fact that the law doesn't say you can, or the regulations don't say you can perform a treatment in this manner. That should be addressed. And then, if there is a need to do local treatments at first, is that in conflict with the label? And as I've talked to most of the pesticide manufacturers, they're saying, no, it's not really in conflict of label, but it is something that needs to be addressed with how they're beginning to make their labels and products and make the recommendations of, can it be used preventatively versus control and correctively? And then what are the laws and the regulations going to say about that?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I could see that being a big problem of, I go buy a home and they say, we didn't do a treatment on the home, but don't worry, we got a clearance because we put bait stations outside this home. And here, by the way, you've got to start paying the monthly bill on this thing. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, they didn't take care of it. They just sent the bill over to me. So yes, I think I think we need to create an advisory board that can dive into it more.
Yeah, and I think you really need to be above the head of the curve, because as DPR is starting to look at, and some of the legislature is starting to look at reducing or eliminating a lot of the products that are available and wanting to move more towards IPM, you're going to need to see that the companies have these tools available and that it works within the industry in the process. So.
Great, awesome. You guys have any questions? No? Yeah, if we can make a recommendation, is that something that we do on our part, to recommend? What? Okay.
So, right, I think that, you can request volunteers to be a part of the committee from the board, from, the public. And we can also, staff can go back and put together a list as well to add to that committee of industry members, staff, and get approval from you directly on the creation of that committee.
Perfect. Yeah, can we move forward and put something together then?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. And
That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I'll work on that with staff and start reaching out to potential members for the committee.
Okay.
And if there's anyone on the board that wants to volunteer.
Okay, perfect. We will let you know.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Agenda item 18.
You didn't want to do public comment on that last item?
Oh. I do want to do public comment on that
I knew
last
you
item.
did.
So on agenda item 17, do we have any public comment?
See?
We do. Oh, man. Sorry, Darren.
Can't expect anything less. Darren Van Steenick, Sprague Pest Solutions. So we, as industry, we would very much support and appreciate guidance on this, especially as, excuse me, as it was mentioned that that one, DPR is trying to reduce overall pesticide usage, and two, as termite baiting becomes much more of an option for us here in California. With the Western sub, we really haven't dealt with or haven't really needed as an industry to use termite baiting. It has been an option, but our liquid applications have been very effective. But with the discovery and the potential spreading of the Formosan subterranean termite, termite baiting is becoming a much more a prevalent option for us and something that we would like to be able to use. And there is a little bit of confusion as to can we use a termite bait if there's no if there's no termites present because of the specific language that that the Act has, and as it talks about a control service agreement and what needs to be done before and what needs to be done after, and so we just would we would like some guidance on that because there is varying interpretations as to who feels what we can and cannot do, and for the control of the Formosan subterranean termite. Baiting really is one of the primary ways to control that termite versus our existing subs, which really liquids are kind of the industry standard at this point. So guidance on this would be very much appreciated.
Any other public comments? Okay, agenda item 18, annual. Sorry, one more. Oh, I thought you were leaving. Here, geez, I just keep.
Todd Vadine, Terminix, QM. So echoing Darren's comments, as you recall back to the March meeting, I can't remember the individual's name that had a study about the effectiveness, looking at all three baits systems and that they were effective. I know in our company we use baits. We were involved in one of the largest bait installations in California, actually in probably the history of that particular bait's existence. And it was extremely effective. We used it because the property had a very high groundwater table, so it was safer to go in with a bait system. And also to echo Darren's comments, there's been signals from DPR to look at minimum use of pesticides with respect to liquid termiticides, and looking at the effectiveness of baits as a substitute. So again, we welcome the opportunity to hear a little bit more about this. Also Siavash out of UCR has corroborated the effectiveness of baits for Formosan subs, which appear to be clearly established in California now. So definitely would like to participate and hear more guidance from the board on bait stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? Okay. Okay, agenda item 18, annual election of board president and vice president. I'll ask Sophia to present this agenda item.
Okay, that time of year again. I'm just going to open it up and ask if there are any nominations for board president.
I would like to nominate Yesenia.
Okay.
Any other nominations?
Any other? No.
Yesenia, do you accept?
Do you
would
accept? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I accept.
Okay, so I think we open it up for public comment,
We need, do we have a second? Oh, I didn't hear you. Yes.
and any public comment?
No?
All right. So Yesenia Anderson is nominated for board president. I'm now going to do roll call. President Finley,
Yes.
Vice President Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Paxson? Yes. Board Member Tingen? Yes. 4-0 vote, motion passes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. So next is Vice President. Are there any nominations for Board Vice President?
I'll nominate Kyle Finley.
I'll accept.
A second? Oh, okay. Any public comment? No public comment. You have nominated Kyle Finley as Board Vice President. I'm now going to do roll call. President Finley,
Yes.
Vice President Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Paxson? Yes. Board Member Tingen? 4-0, motion passes. Congratulations, Vice
Yay.
President Finley.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to agenda item 19, future agenda items. I'll ask the board if they have any items that you would like to see on the future agenda. Hearing none. I want to ask the public if you guys have any questions that you would like to see on the upcoming agenda. Seeing none. Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your patience.
I was leaving early. Oh, I gotta go turn in my computer upstairs.